So welcome to our time zone tutorial. I'm going to try and do a quick overview of why we have different time zones. So if you remember that because of the way the sun shines on only one hemisphere at a time, we have day on part of the Earth at the same time that it's night on the other side of the Earth. We have established a standard 24-hour day, which is determined from the prime meridian. And remember, the prime meridian is this 0 degree. And if you look at a time zone chart, they do a +1, +2 for each hour east of the prime meridian, and they do a -1, -2 from each hour west of the prime meridian. Again, time is determined going east, because that's how the Earth rotates and how we get our times. So one of the things that I use when I think about the United States is that we have our 4 time zones, and so it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. If it's 1 o'clock in California on the west coast, then it's going to be 4 o'clock in DC on the east coast, and it's just a nice straight number line, 1, 2, 3, 4, in the way that you would read a book here in the United States. So the complicated part is the international dateline. Obviously, as you're going around the Earth, there's some point where you have to start the next day, and that is determined over here at 180. That international dateline, which you're going to see oftentimes in that kind of very complicated pattern as it tries to avoid crossing land and very heavily populated places. So let's do some practice. This is a standard kind of time zone map that you might use. So notice that the time zones are all color coordinated, and while the lines don't go straight, the color does. So this green time zone, whatever time it is in any of these green areas, is the same time. These blue areas are going to be an hour difference, and they're going to follow this blue time zone. So the first practice question says, when it's noon in London, what time is it in Milwaukee? So first you need to find London, and then you also need to know where Milwaukee is. It's in Wisconsin, which is here in this central time zone. It also happens to be the same as our time zone. So here's Wisconsin over here. So we're going to try and go from this yellow time zone to this yellow time zone. And if I'm heading this way, I'm going to subtract hours. And if I'm heading this way, I'm going to add hours. But I'm also going to have this pesky international dateline to work with. So I suggest avoiding that when you can. So if it's noon in London, I'm going to go backwards to find out what time it is in Milwaukee. So I'm going to go 11 a.m., 10 a.m., 9 a.m., 8 a.m., 7 a.m., 6 a.m. Here's my yellow time zone. There's Milwaukee. It should be 6 a.m. in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Let's try another one. When it's 5 a.m. in Washington, D.C., what time is it in Moscow? So I'm going to grab my arrow. Here's Washington, D.C. Moscow happens to be over here in Russia on the western side, excuse me. And so from D.C., again, I want to try and avoid this pesky international dateline. So I'm going to go from this green clock, and I'm going to count forward until I get to Moscow. So it is 5 a.m., so here we go, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 12 p.m., and now 1 p.m. for Moscow in this purple time zone here. So the answer is 1 p.m. for Moscow. So notice that I did move forward into the afternoon, and that's what's then going to help you as you start to head across the international dateline and realize then that once I get to the end of my day, I'm going to start the next day. So let's try another practice. When it's noon on Monday in Los Angeles, what time is it in the Philippines? So we have to locate again Los Angeles. It's here in this pink time zone. and noon on Monday. So I'm going to be heading to the Philippines and noticing that the Philippines again are these little blue islands over here in monsoon Asia. Going to be attempting to get to this blue clock. And so, again, I can cross the international date line and worry about changing from Monday into the next day, Tuesday, over here. And if I get that far, if I change my hours. So let's see if it's noon, if we've gone far enough to get to the Philippines. So let's go noon, 1 p.m., 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, midnight, 1 a.m., 2, 3, 4 a.m., and I've gone to the next day. I'm now in the morning of Tuesday. So it's 4 a.m. in the morning on the next day, which is now Tuesday. The next practice. You want to call your boss in Tokyo so that it's 6 p.m. in Japan. What time will it be in Kansas City when you want to place your call? So I work here in Kansas City. My boss works over here in Tokyo. And Japan is in this purple time zone, and I'm here, and again, in the Central Standard Time here in Kansas City. So I want it to be 6 p.m. here, and I'm going to work my way backwards to figure out what time it is in Kansas City. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to see what you come up with, and then we'll see if we got the same thing. So I'm gonna start. My strategy is gonna be to start at the time I want, which is 6 p.m. in Japan, because that's what I know. That's my standard. And I'm gonna work backwards, remember, because time goes back this way, heading back towards the prime meridian. So if it's 6 p.m. in Japan, we're talking 5 p.m., 4 p.m., 3, 2, 1, noon. It's now noon here, so I'm going to get into the early morning. 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and it's the wee early hours of 3 a.m. And I'm still in the same day because I haven't gone a full 24-hour cycle yet to get to the next day. I started at a early enough time in the morning and 6 p.m. Now, if I wanted to talk to him in Japan around noon, then that would take me into a different day back in Kansas City. So let's take what we've learned and now apply that back to India. And if you remember, there is a star here in India, and in your textbook there was an actual notice that said that India's time is actually a half hour ahead of the standard time. So whatever hour we end up with here in India, we're going to go a half hour back or a half hour ahead of that time. So our question says you're in London and you want to call India so that your friend receives the call at 3 p.m., perhaps after he comes home from school. He lives in New Delhi, so we want to find out what time is it in London when we call in order to catch him at 3 p.m. So we want to find out that time difference between London and India and then take into account that half-hour difference at the end. So let's start here. Actually, let's start back here. Remember, that was my strategy with what we know. We know 3 p.m. in New Delhi. So 3 p.m., 2 p.m., 1, noon, 11 a.m., 10 a.m., but don't forget I have to now tack on that half-hour difference, and if you said 9:30 a.m., you are correct. Dun, 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 dun. So now I'm going to give the same 4 questions that were on the Chapter 28 assessment. So if you opted for the assessment and for the India IT and did not do the article, then I'm going to recommend that you redo these 4 questions and get the additional points now that you've had some more practice. And then you can check your answers here at the end. So good luck.